Lexie Natasha tweeted and was just saying a bunch about pride and how proud she was of this team. Have you kind of had similar emotions the last couple days, and how do you balance that with a very painful ending to the season?
Yeah, I mean, I
The entire professional circuit was caught completely off guard. She was a player who spent her initial 2 years teetering on the edge of unemployment, paralyzed by doubt with every jumper. She lived in quiet terror of being discarded by the team, until a sudden shift changed everything in a heartbeat. Lexie Hull didn't merely survive the most seismic transition in the history of the sport, she became its most gripping protagonist. Now, after weathering the storm at the center of the Caitlin Clark phenomenon, she is finally exposing the raw truth of that experience. This isn't the sanitized public relations spin. It is the gritty, unvarnished reality. Her revelations were a total shock, but to grasp their weight, one must envision her life before 22 arrived at the arena. Back in 2022, the Indiana organization invested their 6th overall draft pick in Hull. On the surface, it appeared to be the ultimate breakthrough, a prestigious top 10 selection. This Stanford powerhouse was a national champion and a 3-time standout on the all-conference squad. She had dominated both the hardwood and the classroom, earning elite honors for her brilliance in every facet of student-athlete life. This moment was intended to be the grand beginning of a legendary professional ascent. Instead, it devolved into a grueling struggle hidden from the public eye because the team was bottoming out during those years. They languished at the very bottom of the standings, trapped in a cycle of defeat and missing the postseason entirely. Hull was thrust into a nightmare scenario for any rookie, a desperate daily battle just to keep her job. Every single possession felt dangerously heavy, and she realized she was performing from a place of pure, suffocating terror. During those first 2 seasons, her scoring failed to even reach 5 points per night despite seeing significant floor time. The statistics were clear. A mental weight was holding her back, and she would eventually expose exactly what that burden was. Using her own words, she described those early struggles with a level of transparency that very few professional athletes ever dare. She opened up to Glamour magazine, revealing the internal chaos of her early career. She confessed that every shot felt like a life-or-death situation for her career, fearing the bench with every single miss. Imagine a brilliant Stanford alum with elite credentials losing sleep over the fear that one bad jumper could end her journey. Such was the harsh existence of playing for a struggling franchise with no safety net to catch her fall. There was genuine anxiety in those early years, defined by a culture of defeat and absolutely zero margin for error. Every minor detail was magnified by impossible stakes, and that kind of mental pressure destroys more than just a jump shot. It invades the psyche, altering the way an athlete moves, thinks, and even breathes while under the bright lights. Hull was gasping for air in that environment, yet the world was looking the other way, ignoring the struggling squad. Then, a catalyst emerged that didn't just save her career, but transformed the entire future of the team. It completely redirected the franchise and arguably the entire trajectory of women's professional basketball across the nation. The 2024 draft arrived, and the Fever secured the generational talent known as Caitlin Clark with the top pick. For those who missed it, Clark was the most prolific scoring machine in the entire history of collegiate hoops. She was a powerhouse who transformed an entire conference into a global entertainment juggernaut through her individual brilliance. She shattered ancient records and turned every collegiate game into a high-stakes, sold-out spectacle for the world to witness. She entered the pros with unprecedented momentum, leaving the basketball world wondering if she could actually live up to the hype. She absolutely did. Her debut season ignited a cultural explosion and production levels that instantly defined her as the league's most vital asset. Instantly, the Indiana squad became the epicenter of the most watched and discussed moments in sports. They became the most scrutinized and celebrated unit in basketball, surrounded by massive crowds and primetime broadcasts. A relentless media frenzy trailed them through every city, documenting every move the team made. The chaos began the second Clark suited up, and Hull had a front-row seat to every intense moment of that revolution. People often ignore the true depth of the Clark effect on her teammates. It was about much more than just fame. It wasn't merely the lucrative contracts, the packed arenas, or the constant glare of the television cameras. The most radical shift for Hull occurred on the hardwood, deep within the tactical flow of the game itself. It was a subtle revolution sparked by a player who perceives the court in a way few humans ever have. The woman's court awareness and distribution were truly world-class. Her ability to magnetize the defense opened up golden opportunities for teammates to fire away without a soul in their path. For an athlete like Lexie Hull, who had endured 2 seasons of mental gymnastics over every missed shot, This felt like total liberation. Hull's perspective on the transition carries a specific weight when you consider the uphill battle she faced previously. With Clark leading the charge, she realized that finding an open look was no longer a struggle, opting to trust her preparation and let the results fall where they may, without the burden of anxiety. That wasn't mere ego. It was a state of grace that only manifests when the crushing weight of expectation finally evaporates. The analytics confirmed the shift as Hull connected on 47.1% of her shots from long range in 2024. This career peak stood as one of the most clinical displays of marksmanship in the league during that entire campaign. However, once those elite passes from Clark stopped facilitating the offense, her success rate dipped to 36.7%, mirroring her old collegiate stats and proving the data told the real story. Yet, the evolution of her game was merely one chapter of a much larger transformation. The narrative took a fascinating turn as the bond between Hull and Caitlin Clark sparked massive public interest and media headlines. When Clark was first selected in the draft, many spectators questioned how the young phenom would integrate into a professional environment filled with unfamiliar faces. She had spent her university years flanked by her closest allies, including Kate Martin and Gabby Marshall, her longtime sisters on the court. Entering the Indiana locker room meant being the newcomer in a space where everyone else had established deep-rooted connections. Doubts lingered about whether she would be embraced or if the overwhelming media circus would cause friction among veterans. In reality, a natural kinship formed as she and Hull found common ground almost from the very beginning. By the conclusion of that inaugural season, their partnership had moved far beyond the practice facility in Indianapolis. They became a viral sensation, sharing laughs and trying out local spots while looking like lifelong companions. A shared getaway to Mexico during the mid-season break solidified a chemistry that fans found absolutely captivating. But by 2025, the friendship evolved into something even more iconic, with a brand new identity. Sophie Cunningham joined the squad through an off-season trade, turning the well-known duo into a powerhouse trio of friends. Clark, Hull, and Cunningham eventually adopted the moniker Tres Leches for their group, and the digital content they shared became the most celebrated and humorous material within the professional basketball community. Hull and Cunningham even played the role of celebrity caddies at a golf event, maintaining a constant stream of playful online banter. When Clark shared photos from Media Day celebrating their return, Hull quickly teased her friend about needing to spend more time outdoors, later telling a major publication that the superstar could probably use a bit more vitamin D. It was the sort of effortless ribbing that only occurs when two people are completely secure in their friendship. This dynamic offered the fanbase a rare and intimate perspective on the human beings behind the professional personas. Furthermore, Hull confirmed that Clark would be standing by her side during her upcoming wedding ceremony, an event in the works since she got engaged to former ballplayer Will Matson in April 2025. The pair first crossed paths at Stanford, where Matson was a standout athlete before his selection in the 2019 draft. He walked away from the Diamond after several injuries and now makes his home in the city of Indianapolis, having moved there specifically to support Hull, a move that highlights the stability of her personal life. Despite the heartwarming nature of their friendship, Hull chose to speak candidly about the intense reality of playing with a generational talent, refusing to sugarcoat the experience. This aspect of the journey deserves focus, especially during the high-octane 2025 season that tested the league's limits. Hull observed a different energy in Clark, a certain gravitas and a renewed sense of purpose, a sharp intensity that indicated she was no longer just a rookie, but a player ready to take over. Before the season tipped off, Hull warned the media that they were about to see a much more dangerous version of Clark. She described a professional aura focused entirely on winning, and those initial observations proved to be spot on. During the first 7 contests of 2025, Hull reached a personal zenith in her own performance on the court, putting up double digits while leading the league with a scorching 55.6% from beyond the arc. The Fever appeared to be a squad that was at last finding its perfect rhythm. Then, the medical reports began to pile up. A quad strain forced Clark to miss several contests, followed quickly by a groin injury. A string of soft tissue setbacks followed. By July 15th, as Clark collapsed for the 4th time in just months against the Sun, the atmosphere on the sideline shifted into one of the most soul-crushing displays of the entire year. Stumbling away from the action, Clark leaned her head against the padded basket support in total despair, hiding her face behind a towel while struggling to suppress tears as her hard work seemed to crumble around her. Glued to her side, offering the kind of silent support only a true companion can provide, sat Lexie Hull. Hull eventually shared the mental toll that period took on Clark, detailing the haunting questions of why this was happening. The agony of outworking everyone only for her own physique to betray her made for a brutal, testing chapter. Nevertheless, even with Clark's minutes restricted for most of the campaign, the Fever continued to rack up victories. They battled into the semifinals, forcing the future champion Aces into a fifth-game overtime thriller before Indiana finally succumbed. That deep postseason surge was largely fueled by Hull's relentless presence, injecting a brand of gritty two-way play that statistics fail to capture, like sacrificing her body to draw charges, shadowing the elite perimeter threats nightly, and delivering crucial hustle plays whenever the score tightened up. Amidst the chaos, she was absorbing a reality that she eventually felt the world needed to hear. The October 2025 Glamour feature honoring her as Woman of the Year was when Hull decided to speak without filters. She stood as one of 5 athletes highlighted in that issue, joined by Nafisa Collier and the Sabley sisters. It was a well-deserved recognition for a woman who had silently ascended to the ranks of the league's most admired. However, the segment that truly set social media ablaze had nothing to do with stats, style, or her personal life. It centered on the hidden burdens of sharing a roster with the planet's most famous female athlete, as Hull spoke bluntly. She noted a palpable sense of resentment toward the Fever, fueled by the massive media circus and the crowds following Caitlyn. Those comments would have sparked controversy on their own, yet she chose to dive even deeper into the issue. She disclosed that the locker room has been fully aware of the chatter coming from their opponents, not mere outside rumors, but direct echoes from rival teams, vowing that they simply will not allow Indiana to succeed. The bullseye on their backs is authentic, as every opponent brings a heightened, tangible intensity whenever they face the Fever. Hull has been anchored at the epicenter of this storm from the very second Clark stepped onto the professional stage. Her reaction to this pressure was remarkable, as she avoided the path of the victim and refused to offer excuses. Instead, she embraced the challenge, welcoming the extra motivation others felt over things the Fever could not even control. Hull remarked that if envy makes opponents play their absolute hardest, then she welcomes facing everyone's peak performance every night. She admitted that the team definitely feels the weight of everyone bringing their A-game against them. Such poise is a rare way to navigate one of the most polarizing environments ever seen in the history of the WNBA. The spotlight following Caitlin Clark carries far more than just packed arenas, television cameras, and lucrative marketing contracts. It brings rivals who treat every regular season matchup like a championship finale, while officials feel the heat of intense scrutiny. Every movement by an Indiana player is instantly dissected, shared online, and turned into a subject of endless debate, often twisted into narratives by critics who have zero experience within the walls of a professional basketball organization. Lexie Hull has endured this chaos for 2 straight years, witnessing the internal reality that no casual fan could ever truly grasp. When she finally chose to break her silence, her honesty pierced through the media static with undeniable precision. One must pause to appreciate the entire trajectory of what Lexie Hull has navigated throughout her professional career. She entered the league as a skilled prospect on a struggling squad, enduring years where every missed basket felt like a disaster. Her self-belief had been shaken, and her place within the organization remained frustratingly undefined for far too long. The team she pinned her future on was spiraling downward, leaving her powerless to change the course of their descent. Then, the single most transformative figure in the sport's history arrived and completely rewrote the team's destiny overnight. The massive audiences, the locker room vibe, and even Hull's own self-perception underwent a radical, permanent evolution. Rather than fading into the shadows of greatness, she emerged as a pivotal character in the WNBA's most gripping narrative. Their unbreakable bond, the viral highlights, and their seamless chemistry on the court became the heart of the story. From those raw sideline emotions to that unfiltered spotlight, Lexie Hull has evolved far beyond the gritty role player she once was. A household icon. Her shooting was a lethal weapon, but her relentless defense made her an absolute cornerstone. Yet, it was her raw honesty about surviving the Caitlin Clark hurricane that truly captivated the league's most dedicated observers. An heavy question now looms. What does the future hold for this rising star? Hull hit the offseason as a restricted free agent, a career first that carries heavy weight. This shift complicates the math in ways she cannot foresee, despite deep roots firmly planted in Indianapolis soil. Her partner moved cities to support her journey, and she has frequently professed her devotion to the city's culture. But the ruthless machinery of pro sports remains famously indifferent to matters of the heart. Compounding the stress, The league's shifting labor agreements have created a fog of confusion that no player can pierce. Ultimately, the Fever possess the legal power to mirror any paycheck dangled by a rival suitor. Considering her undeniable breakout in 2025, the consensus remains that Indiana will pay any price to ensure she stays. The narrative hit a fever pitch when Caitlin Clark shared a snapshot of the duo, captioned with only 3 telling letters: